It is the top development that we are tracking from our studios here in News9. We got on to this, information, and it's so ironic that the first few pictures that did come across from what the streets, for Kathmandu, they came to us via social media, and that's the same social media platform that has in fact been banned, and it's a blanket ban across 26 of these various social media platforms by the KP Oli led dispensation. You rightly pointed out that was a Facebook page called Gen Z that is called for this clarion call. 5 days back is when the Prime Minister actually put out this ban. He said that independence cannot be undermined, freedom cannot be undermined, national sovereignty has to take precedence over everything else. And the essential issue is that there is a particular law in place where the Nepalese government wanted all of these 26 social media intermediaries to register themselves as acting as state vigilance tools for their own people. That is something that WhatsApp, Instagram, WeChat, Signal, a long list of these 26 social media platforms said a big no to, which is why there was a blanket ban. And lo and behold, the Gen Z has taken matters into their own hands. They say that this is a digitally repressive law that was coming about. This move is digitally repressive. Not only have you, put a clamp down on our freedom of expression, but you've also done the same when it comes to our digital connectivity, which is a major means of staying connected across the rest of the world. And when we're talking about what's happening in and around our own neighborhood, take a look at what happened in Bangladesh. Many of that protest in the toppling of the Sheikh Hasina government was carried out on social media. At the same time, look at what happened in Sri Lanka. Gotabaya Rajapaksa and the family had to flee because, well, social media became that linchpin to connect people, to mobilize people and bring them together. This doesn't seem to be the reason, but it is the bone of contention why so many youth are out there onto the streets. I was earlier speaking to some journalists on the ground over there, because it's not all Gen Z. And for those who don't know what Gen Z is, Gen Z are basically kids that have been born between 1997 and then so on. Anybody who's been born after 1997 falls into the Gen Z basket, and everybody before that is a millennial. So Gen Z, they thrive on social media. Pretty much everything's happening on this little piece of appliance. Your life, your love, your romance, your business, your economics, your news consumption, everything happens on social media. So why put a blanket ban on social media? Couple that with factors of rampant corruption, because mind you, several journalists, youth that are not Gen Z but still are miffed with the KP Oli led dispensation. And now the political chess pieces are also moving, because Kathmandu's mayor has also come out and backed this particular protest. He has been a rapper. He's got several anti-establishment rap songs that got famous back in the day. He is quite old, so hence the mayor of Kathmandu cannot come out and actually take part in these protests, but he has been a votary of raising your voice, of peaceful dissent when it comes to matters of raising your voice up against some of the government's moves. Now, is this a litmus test for KP Oli? If it is a litmus test for KP Oli, how big of a test is this for KP Oli? And at the same point in time, Samya, one also has to take a look at that. Are there any learning lessons? Because all of this is happening in our own neighborhood. We've got a lot of Gen Z here back at home in India as well. So now, should we now look at Gen Z as another political constituency for them taking matters into their own hands? What we're also picking up is that 9 people have lost their lives. These are official data that we've got. The numbers could change very well at this point in time, but we still don't know as to what the actual figure is. Official data suggests 9 people have lost their lives in these skirmishes, because it's a very important position for the law enforcement agencies. It's great that the crowd gets swollen up. All these federal parliament buildings, they're under siege by the people, let alone the Nepalese youth. But it is actually the police officials, it is the law enforcement agency officials and personnel that have to exercise massive resolve, have to exercise great amounts of patience, because things can go awry within a second. Take a look at what happened in Indonesia. A proper protest that was already on against the government's moves and the government's taxations, and of course corruption being part of that, unemployment being a part of that. But one delivery boy gets killed and the entire delivery community comes together and that entire protest blows out of proportion. The same happened in Kenya when protests against the government took a different turn when a journalist got killed. And this entire fiasco that we've been seeing on the streets of Kathmandu, Samya, has the recipe for a same sort of disaster. And lo and behold, already we've lost 9 lives, more than 80 people getting treatment at various trauma centers because the situation is such. And this is not just Kathmandu, like you mentioned earlier, from Biratnagar to Butwal, major cities across Nepal are being affected by these so-called Gen Z protests. But critics are now pointing out, critics are now saying that if this in fact is Gen Z, who is backing them? KP Oli calls them puppets, but they can't all be puppets, can they? And if there are a huge amount of puppets in that multitude that is protesting on the streets of Kathmandu, who is backing them? That's a big question mark at this point in time, Samya. But all in all, acrimonious scenes on the streets of Kathmandu. We're going to continue to bring you details, pictures beaming right behind me, and we're getting live visuals. But it's ironic that we have to use social media to get what's happening in Kathmandu, where a social media ban has in fact led to the entire protests.